Rugby, where we go through and look at games from the past, put them in context, and also look at how the game has changed as well. Hi, I'm Paul, the guy behind DrivingMaul, your best place rugby predictions and opinion, and this time we are going to take you all the way back to 2000, the NPC final. We've been back to 2000 and was it 2010? I think it was. Now we're going back even further, and to join me to go all that way back is Anthony. Oops, I've gone and pressed the wrong button. I meant to press that button. Now you're on screen. It's Anthony. How are you doing, sir?
G'day, Paul. Thanks for having me.
Oh, good. And we can see you've got your Wellington jersey on. I've gone Taranaki as I don't have one for either of these two teams. And
I'll sort you out with the Hurricanes one later, mate. I've got a spare one that I talked about that I'll send down.
That'll be fantastic. And talking about jerseys, actually, one of the first things that struck me in this game was you couldn't tell who was who on the TV. We had Wellington in their black jerseys and white shorts, and Canterbury in black with kind of burgundy stripes, but the burgundy stripes had black lines through them, and black shorts, which meant the referee was referring to them as whites and reds, and you were like, neither of them are either of those colours.
Yeah, and I guess the footage we were watching was an old video recorded onto YouTube, so it's not the best quality either. And when there was longer angles, you had to know which team was going which direction to know who was who sometimes.
Yes, it was. Good morning to everyone in the live chat. If you remember this game, please let us know your thoughts of the NPC final from 2000. It was held at Jade Stadium in Christchurch, and I had the attendance down here somewhere, but it was a full ground. It was when we got big crowds to these games, and the atmosphere was good, the crowds were good, everyone was enjoying the game, weren't they?
Oh, they totally were, and I think one thing that stands out for this in my memory as well, and I'd forgotten just how many were there until I was rewatching this in prep, was just how many All Blacks were on the field. I think Canterbury had 14 in the starting lineup. Wellington, we didn't have a lot of All Blacks back then, but we had names like Cullen, Umaga, Lomu.
Sorry, hang on. Let's just slow down here. Like, you didn't have many All Blacks back then?
Well, we didn't have 14 and 4 on the bench like the Crusaders did.
No, you only had 11 in the starting lineup.
11 current or 11 with potential to be at that point.
Oh, I'm not sure, because I can't actually find a. I've not managed to find a team list from the game, but reading one of the articles, it says, the victorious Wellington team boasted 11 All Blacks in their starting lineup. Legends of the game such as John Olomu, Christian Cullen and Tana Umaga. Even 19-year-old Jerry Collins played in the epic game. In the same game, Norm Hewitt played on with a broken arm. I hadn't actually noticed that when watching it. But Canterbury had almost unbelievable 14 All Blacks in their starting 15, including Mertens, Marshall, and Hardman, Norman, and Maxwell. The only non-All Black was wing Marika Vunibaka, who played for Fiji. And then as you say, there were 4 All Blacks on the bench as well for Canterbury. So.
Yeah. And look, I mean, Vunny wasn't an All Black, but he was a stellar, and sorry, he's one of the memories that I remember in this game. We'll touch on that in a moment. And I guess, Wellington, I look at it in the context. We had people who were going to be All Blacks in the future. Jerry Collins, Rodney Soialo. I guess there's probably a couple of sneaking through the gaps as All Blacks, in that Jason O'Halloran played about 2 minutes of a Test match, so he counted, and. Kupu Vanisi, who was the third flanker, or the open side flanker, had played at least 1 Test match, maybe 2. So Wellington had 11 All Blacks, but they weren't name brand. And through the 90s, there was a period where Alama Uramea was the only All Black from Wellington for a couple of seasons, and
he started on the bench. In this game.
And he was on the bench for this game, his final game, and he's coming off the bench. So it shows how good the backline was that we could do that. We could bench a player of his caliber.
Yeah. These were stacked teams. This is and it does say in the article I was reading that we will never get another final like this.
No.
At the NPC, and it's very true. We won't. Because these players just don't play this rugby anymore, this level.
No, definitely, and I think what it was also unique for me about this final was not just the number of All Blacks in there, but the number of people who played or who captained the All Blacks in a Test match. So obviously we had regular captains from Umanga, Todd Blackett and Reuben Thorne, both playing for Canterbury, but then Justin Marshall had captained the All Blacks in Test matches in '97, and Jerry Collins and Rodney Soialo both captained later on in the 2000s. In tours where Richie was unavailable to lead them. So, 6 All Black captains in one NPC game is a huge star quality, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Very much so. It was unfortunately played. I mean, J Stadium unfortunately was an oval, wasn't it? So the crowd weren't as close to the action as I like. I'm a great believer in rectangular stadiums, but hey, it was still packed out, which was good. A couple of names here that didn't really. The first list listed Will Chignall and John Gallagher as the commentators to take people back. Interestingly enough, Will Chignall is now the Chief Marketing Officer for the World Surf League. So
oh, brilliant!
Crazy little facts you find out when you research these sort of things. But then it went on to mention that Grant Nesbitt and Murray Mexted were the commentators. So I'm not quite sure who was actually commentating this game, but some names from the past there.
Yeah, I noticed that the feed we were seeing, and it's possibly was a different broadcast. It was showing up as Sky Sport 3, which there's no way the NPC final in 2000 would have been on the third Sky Sport channel. So maybe that was an international feed coming through, because I had noticed the commentators. I mean, John Gallagher was probably appropriate, whoever he was actually commentating for, given he was a Wellingtonian. Wow. I think he's actually Scottish, but he played for Wellington in the 80s, and he played for the All Blacks before he switched to the 13-man code.
Oh, there was plenty of there was a definite Wellington bias to the commentary. Even if we would to even when we got sort of even when Wellington were leading 3-13 after about 10 or 11 minutes. They were still going, can Wellington put together 3 big games on the trot? I'm not sure they can. So look, Wellington were definitely the underdogs coming into this. People definitely had Canterbury down as strong favourites for this.
Absolutely. I mean, when you've got 19 All Blacks in your squad, and that was the season that Canterbury probably made up the bulk of the Crusaders as well, with a few imports would have been in there, but they just finished the Super Rugby. I think 2000 would have been their third win. So you've got guys who know how to play big games, coming up against. Admittedly, Wellington had a star-studded backline there. There was a lot of big names, and there were some up-and-coming guys with Collins and Soialo. But a different mindset between both the teams. One knows what to do, and one's sitting there going, "We've just got to get on and play a game of rugby."
Yeah, and let's be blunt here. Wellington and the Hurricanes have a long reputation for not being finalists. Let's be honest. Playing nice rugby, winning games, but when it comes to the crunch, just not having what it takes to get a title. And as we've seen with the Hurricanes, they've only got one title in their history, which kind of shows and backs that up.
Yeah, and look, the context of that as well, and again, it's why this sticks out for me as a key game. It was Wellington's second ever final. Now, the NPC only brought the finals in the early 90s, so prior to that, it had been if you topped the table, you won the tournament. And I think Wellington's last trophy was in 86 or 87, so you're talking a decade and a half of no silverware in the cabinet. As you said, the Hurricanes, they hadn't been performing well for 4 years. They made the semis in 97, but then didn't show up again for another 3 years, I think. So, for a Wellington rugby fan, long time between drinks, really.
Yes, definitely. Now, amusingly enough, to get details of the 2000 season, I've had to go to the German Wikipedia. Because the German Wikipedia has all the games and all the results, whereas I can't find it on the English Wikipedia. But look, they could take some Wellington beat Canterbury 27-20 in the opening round of the season. But come the end, Canterbury topped the table with 8 wins out of 9. Auckland came second with 8 wins out of 9, but 2 less bonus points. Wellington were only were next in third with 6 wins, and then Taranaki with 5 wins. Taranaki in third place had a minus 65 points difference, which gives you an idea as to how strong those top 2 were. Yeah, Canterbury over 9 games had 152 plus points difference.
Yeah.
Which gives you an idea that they were dominant. 307 points over 9 games, only let in 155. In the semi-final against Taranaki, they came through 31-23, and Wellington went up to Auckland and upset Auckland 23-48 with a blitzing a game, and obviously people just did not expect Wellington, or Canterbury knew they could not let Wellington have space, otherwise it was going to get messy, and hence this was a ferocious game.
And that was one of the points I remember picking up last night with the commentary that we would have been listening to on that, where I think it was Gallagher mentioned that Canterbury couldn't afford to keep kicking the ball out of hand, because every time they did, you had a Lomu or a Cullen, and the other wing, the right wing at the time was Brad Fleming. Now, didn't play for the All Blacks, but won a Commonwealth Games gold medal with the Sevens. So, a powerful weapon in his own right. And you've got Umaga in the midfield. So to be kicking back at those guys, not necessarily a smart move for the best of teams.
And this game had a lot of kicking in. If you think the modern game has kicking in it, boy, go back and watch one of these. Neither of these sides were going to play in their own half at all. Territory was king in this game. It was not about possession at all. We should probably start actually getting onto the games. But remember, the 2000. This was a time. So I've brought up the sort of big news stories from then. Obviously, do you remember Pitt Island?
No.
The rocky outcrop of the Chatham Islands was the first place to reach into the new century, into the millennium.
Yes. So full disclosure, 2000 was my final year of secondary school. So everything was revolving around what the heck am I going to do when this whole schooling thing finishes. So there's a few things I remember, but some of the details might be a bit vague as well.
Yeah, so that was one of the big news stories of this place obviously no one's ever heard of since. But yes, one of those fun ones. The other one was that New Zealand. I don't know when in the year, but I'm assuming this happened before this. Was that national pride was at an all-time high with Russell Coutts winning the America's Cup. I mean, the first non-American team to defend the America's Cup, and I'm assuming that was in the summer because I guess they're looking for good weather. So I'm assuming that was before.
Yeah, I can't remember the time of year it was, but I certainly remember a few things about that campaign. Obviously, Coutts leading us through, and I think it was the fifth race where he handed the helm to a young Dean Barker to sail the boat out there. But yeah, absolutely, sporting pride was quite high. The All Blacks had obviously come back from a World Cup where we once again failed to fire in the semi-finals. The old bogey team France knocking us out the year before, so there's a few sporting things that we were trying to build up on.
Yep. Finally, lots of Aucklanders went up One Tree Hill in November to see the final hours of the solitary pine up there that got chopped down because I think it was dead. Due to heavy winds, it had to come down. So One Tree Hill lost its one tree. Back in 2000, Nuntree Hill as well. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of negative news stories as well, which I'm not going to bother with because they're not a lot less fun. But they were the fun news stories from 2000.
And like I say, 2000 final year of secondary school for me, but it was a year that my rugby focus changed. I mean, I was never going to be a pro player. I was playing, I think, third 15 in the college at the time, and I dislocated my knee in the first game of the season, ripped all the ligaments. As the doctor described it to my mother, I did a Michael Jones from the 80s, and kind of went, well, if I was never going to be a pro rugby player, there's no point in trying to play amateur either on a bung knee. So had to refocus the way I spent my time after that.
Oh dear! Oh, shame to hear that. But you've seemed to have come through it okay. So which is good.
Totally.
So getting on to the game. I mean, we've got all these All Blacks being mentioned and thrown around, but actually the NPC MVP was David Horwell.
Yes.
In this, it wasn't Mertz, it wasn't any of these other names that we've been, or Lomu or Cullen. Nope, the MVP was Horwell, and he had his kicking boots on early on. Canterbury off the feet at the ruck. Oh, dirty Canterbury, always like that. Knocked over an early three. We then had a scrum, and there were lots of early chips and grubbers through by Wellington. One of them worked. Lomu collected it and touched down in the corner. And we're 6 minutes in, and it's 10-0 in an era of what was supposed to be slow scoring, muddy rugby. This one went off with an absolute cracker. We then had Razor Robertson, obviously now the Crusaders head coach, binding in front of the player with the ball, which gave another kick to Wellington, and suddenly the underdogs are 13-0 up with only 9 minutes on the clock. People must have been going mad at this point in disbelief.
Yeah, I think disbelief is probably the right word for it. I can't remember exactly where I'd have been watching this game, but certainly there would have been a lot of screaming at the TV. The McMahon family, my brother and my father particularly, aren't quite rugby watchers. So there would have been plenty of shouting at the TV at this point about being 13-0 up. But at the same time, I think not long before, 3, 4, 5 years before, Wellington had gone down to Canterbury for a Ranfurly Shield challenge and lost 63-17 or scoreline to that effect. So at the same time, it's like we're up 13-0, but this is Canterbury, and anything can happen.
No, yeah, very true. And it had been very, 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 very kind of back and forth in those early stages. No one really putting any actual continuity together. The first piece of that was by Canterbury, and we had a nice high tackle that would definitely have been a card nowadays. But actually we just say, stop there, let's go back for advantage. Not even a talking to the player. You're like, whoa! Nowadays that's like, you're off, mate. Question is how much was it with force or not? Because it was either yellow or red. Which when you look back, it's a very different game nowadays.
Oh, very different. I think there was a lot of physicality in there and a lot of intensity. But you're right. There were moments that were the advantage rule was played a little bit more liberally. It felt watching back than what it is now. And the referee's decision and I guess video replay and taking it upstairs wasn't that well. Or wasn't a big part of the game at that point. So the ref played what they saw.
Yep, no, absolutely. So that meant that Ben Blair got to do the kicking for Canterbury. You're like, hang on, but Mertens is playing, and then Ben Blair suddenly steps up and kicks. You're like, okay, a bit surprised by that. And it ended up with Ben Blair and Mertens. Basically, Ben Blair would kick on the right-hand side of the pitch, and Mertens would kick on the left. Which is something you don't. Again, something that now I think about it is something I remember happening with quite a few teams back then. I can't remember the last team. I mean, teams nowadays never have a left and a right kicker.
No.
So
I think the best you got, and you saw it with the Hurricanes when we had both Barrett brothers playing, was you had a short range and a long range kicker, and that's probably the most you've got now. Someone's either going to put it over from 50 metres or someone else will do it at 22. But left and right doesn't happen so much anymore.
Yep. Soon after that, Jerry Collins decided he would put in a high tackle. Just a penalty. Who cares? And then then we have a scrum penalty which Mertz kicks over. So we realise it's a left and right at that point. Did a little research. So Ben Yates for Wellington. Do you remember much about him?
No, and it's funny watching the game. Like there's a few players that in watching the game, I remember them being in the position they were in. So Kupu Vanisi at 7, Brad Fleming on the wing. But try for the life of me, the two props, man, I could not recall who they were at all at any point. So
Ben Yates, Englishman, who came and played rugby in New Zealand because you had a 6-month ban in the UK for biting a player's ear. So there you go. Lots of let's say it was a different time then.
It definitely was.
Canterbury then had pretty much all the possession for this piece, but they were only getting penalties. They weren't getting points. Lots of kicking I talked about. People trying offloads, but this is pre Sonny Bill Williams and people actually knowing how to offload. So a lot of these are just flung backwards onto grass, and the theory being if we've got front foot ball, our guys will be coming forwards and they'll pick it up, rather than actually trying to offload it into people's hands on the whole. It's just it's a kind of a wild throw backwards. Yeah. So which makes it much more scrappy game.
And in both teams, you had players, and particularly in Wellington. I mean, Cullen could scoop the ball off the ground and keep moving at pace any day of the week. So I guess it was a tactic that the players back then had adjusted to. But you're right, it certainly wasn't as fluid as what we see today.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened next. Amango tries to offload off the floor. Cullen scoops it up, then basically just runs across the pitch around the defence and goes and scores. Basically, notices he's up against a lock, and just everyone else on the pitch can just forget it. Cullen's off, and he goes and scores. And it's 6:20. So even though there's been that sort of comeback by Canterbury, they've not got the points for their possession, for their territory, and they're finding themselves 14 points down with half an hour on the clock.
And still from a Wellington perspective, we've only got a 14-point lead with 50 minutes still to be played. So you can look at it from both sides of that coin. And from as you said earlier, we've often been the bridesmaid and had good scores eaten away on us. And this was one of those ones where, man, you dare to dream, but at the same time, good Lord.
And Ben Blair kicks a couple of penalties over from scrums to finish it at 12:20 at half time. Scrums were a problem for Wellington in this one, and when you're up against an All Blacks pack, it's unsurprising. But it is let's be honest, it's something that we've talked about for Wellington and for the Hurricanes for decades, that their scrum or their tight five in particular. And as you say, you can remember pretty much everyone behind the tight five. It's just the tight five that don't live in memory, unsurprisingly, in this one.
Correct, and the reason the two locks stand out, Dion Waller and Inoki Apiaki, I mean, they were notorious for giving up a card at some point in the game for both Wellington and the Hurricanes. So there was a period there where as a Wellington fan, you felt that they were actually preparing to play better with 14 on the field than 13, other than 15. So from those two back, and Norm Heald, obviously a household name as an All Black and as the New Zealand Māori captain as well. So, but those two props, and try as I might, I struggle to name front rowers for Wellington that haven't had the national honours. So I mean, we've got Dane Coles there now. We've had Namia Tialata. Luke Marnie sticks in my memory because he was a couple of years ahead of me at college, and Tim Fairbrother a year ahead of me at college as well. But the other ones, it's like, I couldn't name front rowers from Wellington over the last 25 years.
Yeah, and if you look at the Hurricanes, they go to Taranaki, they go to Hawke's Bay quite often for their front rows. And front rows was going to go from bad to worse. The props got injured, so they ended up having two props got injured, so they had two hookers in the front row. This was back in the day when, if you're playing the front row, you're playing the front row. It doesn't matter which position you're in. And with only one prop replacement on the bench, when the second prop got injured, on came the hooker, and they had two hookers and a prop for the front row for the final half hour. Which was never going to help.
No, definitely not. And like you said, it's up against the All Black forward pack pretty much. Mark Hammett and at hooker on the other side. I think he probably had more test success than Norm Hewitt did. But at the same time, Norm Hewitt's problem was a guy called Sean Fitzpatrick.
Yep.
And Hammett's another one who went on to coach later on as well. Had a coaching career with the Hurricanes, and then I think he ended up in Europe somewhere.
So we don't have any scores for the first 10 minutes, but we do have a great kick to the corner, which the Crusaders then just give a penalty at the line out, so let Wellington clear their lines. We have Horwell hitting the post Hurricanes kicks the corner, Crusaders give a penalty, and Horwell then hits the post with his penalty. Cullinan tries a 40-metre drop goal and misses. Wellington had opportunities to stretch out that lead, but they didn't. And they paid for that when Canterbury got the first points on the board to make it to close the gap to 5.
Definitely.
But the tail of the second half was Canterbury possession, Wellington points. And it's those, as you say, it's that back line that can counter-attack. Just before the hour mark, Cullen spots a forward in front of him, breaks, and gives it to Emanga to score. Next time, Canterbury do a flat pass that's intercepted, quickly given to Lomu, a couple of handoffs, and another try. And suddenly, in the space of 3 minutes, it's blown out from 15 to 20 to 15 to 34. And it's at this point I think the Wellington fans could dare to dream.
Oh, absolutely. And look, it's this Lomu try that you've just mentioned that, and we can't underplay it because it's the bit when we heard of the untimely passing of Jonah a few years ago. This is the memory that I had of him playing in any jersey as being outstanding. Take the '95 World Cup and the try he scored against England. This one, it wasn't just picking up a loose pass and offloading. Lomu, I think, got the ball. So Mertens threw a bad pass. Jason O'Halloran through the midfield picks it up, passes it to Dion Waller. So there's a lock in the midfield there who makes the smartest decisions he's ever done and has the ball for about a second and a half before it's in Lomu's hands. And Lomu picks it up, somewhere between the 22 and the halfway line. So he's still got a lot of field to work with. And he's got Marika Vunibaka against him as well. And if there was anyone playing rugby at the time that was bigger than Jonah in terms of size, Vuni would probably be that one. So you've got giant on giant, and Vuni makes the mistake of trying to go high, and Lomu just pushes him, throws him off. And then Vuni comes back at him, and again goes high, but manages to slip down on this one. And he's down around Jonah's around the legs of Jonah. So the big man's got to carry him, gets him to his knees at about the 5 metre line, and Jonah just drags him for 5 metres across the field to get to that score in the corner. So it's not just Jonah scores a try; it's Jonah scores a try that only Jonah Lomu could ever score. And it's one it's on YouTube. I mean, this is one people have got to go back and watch because it's the power of that guy that makes that try stick in my mind.
Yeah, and there'll be a link below to the entire game. So, folks, just if you want to go watch the game, go and check out the link below. If you watch on YouTube, or if you're reading it on the on DrivingMaul.com, you'll see the embedded post just down below.
And definitely watch it. It's about the 60-61 minute mark, and just by chance as well. Watching the game last night on replay, the timing that I managed to start the game, ironically. That moment, that try, happened on my TV, or was playing on my TV at 11:59 last night. So my memory of lockdown in New Zealand at 11:59 is now watching Jonah Lomu score my favourite try in rugby of all time.
Oh, brilliant! Very, very good. That was the end of the scoring for Wellington, and the last 20 minutes was pretty much defence. There was a deliberate knock-on near the line. Would have been a definite yellow nowadays. Was it just a little ticking off back then?
No. That deliberate knock-on, that was Dion Waller, and he did get a yellow on that one as well.
Did he?
So,
was there a yellow? Was he?
Okay. Yeah, he stuck true to form, and I think he spent time in the bin on that one. So it was again, it's now Wellington's got hope. We know how to play with 14 men, so we're all good here.
So Mertz scores as Canterbury bash away at the line there to make it 22-34. There's a massive overlap beforehand for that. So yeah, it was always definitely on there. And then again on 72 minutes, the Mertz hits the line, offload for a lock to flop over the line, and suddenly it's 29-34. It's only a 5-point game all of a sudden. It's a game that's blown out. Canterbury are coming back. There's still 8 minutes on the clock. That one wasn't a yellow card. The yellow card comes in the 83rd minute.
Ah, yes. Sorry, at that point.
So I'm looking at. I didn't note the yellow card. Yes, that deliberate knock-on wasn't a yellow card. It should have been.
Yeah. The next one was.
The next one was. But as I say, it took until the 83rd minute to get the yellow card, though. For a deliberate knock-on. 3 tap and goes with split forwards was a real interesting one. Look, you're up against a team that's got 2 hookers on the pitch, that's got a yellow card for. That's probably why then, because the yellow card's for a front row player, so it would have been uncontested scrums. That's why they were tapping and going and weren't going for scrums at the end there.
Possibly, yeah.
Because to me, I just couldn't understand why they were not going for a scrum with time up. Clearly the most powerful scrum, but obviously if the prop had been yellow carded and all the other forwards were injured, front row forwards, it would have been uncontested scrums. So perhaps that yellow card did save them, as you say, playing better with 14 players.
Yeah, although I mean, and it's an interesting one because it would have been. It's still curious because it would have been Canterbury feeding and an uncontested scrum. They'd have taken the win back. So, like you say, I'm not sure. Maybe they backed their firepower for a pushover try.
But they couldn't do a pushover try because it was uncontested.
Sorry, from a tap and go. Maybe they were backing their firepower for that.
So clearly, they were wanting their forwards to do it rather than their backs. But I say 3 of them, and when I say tap and go, they weren't quick ones. They were slow, get everyone set up. Again, a move you do not see today. You don't see set moves off a tap and go. You either kick the corner or you take it quickly.
Or you take it quickly and try and hit that gap. And particularly, Marshall tended to be the kind of guy who would take a quick tap and snipe through a gap, and would be well adapted to that today. So to have the line setting up, ready to fire, it's quite a significant achievement. Again, you wouldn't see it much today.
No. Merch switched sides several times, but the blind defence. One of the things about this was, the blind defence wasn't switching off. Even when the ball went out to the open side, the blind defence was coming up because Mertz was switching would take the ball on the open side and then because it's been passed in them and would pass to the blind side. But Wellington's defence, was massive over those final minutes, and they saw it out.
Yeah, and look, I mean, both of them were young at this point. Jerry Collins, I think, was only 19. Soialo would have been 20, 21. Neither of them had actually made the All Blacks at this point. Presuming they were still on the field at this point as well, but those were 2 guys who would not run away from a tackle if they were on defence. They were. I think Jerry probably deliberately chased people around the field just to tackle them and tackle them hard. So I guess mammoth defensive effort from 2 guys who would become well known for solid defence throughout their career as well.
No, absolutely. And one of the points that there is in this was that it was the young bucks of that of the Wellington back row trying to make it all, well, maybe not trying to, but making names for themselves at that time, as you say. And part of it was, hey, I'm young, I'm going to prove against this guy that I'm that I'm the best. And there was a lot of there was definitely a part of that in here. The one comment I did miss out very early on, which I meant to mention, was that Christian Cullen, because Christian has done a bit of a Hollywood. So definitely taking a light tap and diving was frowned upon back in those days as well. That was in the opening minutes.
Yep.
So yes, I think that yes, perhaps some of the backs had a bit of a Hollywood kind of image, whereas the forwards definitely did not in that Wellington setup.
And definitely did not have they were not afraid about going forward. And you mentioned earlier that Norm Hewitt had played most of that game with a broken arm, so he wasn't stepping away from contact. He wasn't stepping away from defence. He was just getting stuck in and taking everything that was thrown at him as well. It was huge for that. And I mean, you can't reiterate enough what it looks like when you've got a forward pack that's at that time has one All Black in the front row or one All Black in the tight five coming up against a forward pack that has 8 All Blacks in it.
Yep. Yeah, no, it was a massive effort by those forwards, and it was a game won by defence at the end there. I say, even though Wellington had got themselves out to that big lead, Canterbury got it back to within 5, and they could easily have scored with time up and have snatched victory from the jaws of defeat. But,
absolutely, and because of the gap as well, because of that 5-point gap, it was definitely like they had to go for the line. There was no decision from them. It was we could take the penalty. It was like no, you take the penalty, game over. You lost by 2. Worst case scenario, it's a final. You score a try, you convert, you win, or you go into overtime.
Yeah, and look, they scored 2 converted tries to get back. I think it was 2 converted tries to get back that close. So. They were 3 converted tries down. They knew they had to score 3 converted tries from I think it was about 20 minutes out. So it wasn't like any kicking for posts was long gone. Well before then. So I mean you get a doffy cap to Canterbury for coming back. But I say that defensive effort by Wellington was massive and saw them through to their first ever final win, as you mentioned.
Absolutely, and I think in the 20 years since we've won, the Wellington team themselves, they've won one more final. They won the Ranfurly Shield in 2008. It's a long drought for Wellington fans. And the Hurricanes have had their one title victory as well. So we remember the good games. We remember the games where silverware comes home, right?
But this is one of the things, isn't it? It's, and I've not actually got the list up, but when Auckland beat Canterbury last season, 2 seasons ago now, Canterbury had won. I think it was 10 out of the previous 11 finals.
Yeah.
So it's a long time between drinks for everybody except Canterbury and the Crusaders. Let's be blunt here, from a New Zealand rugby point of view. It's there's it is. They make the final every year, and they win it more times than they lose it. It's as simple as that, really.
Absolutely. And when they're not winning it, it seems to be at the moment that Tasman are. So Tasman being the Canterbury sister franchise or sister union as part of the Crusaders, and if one team, if Canterbury's not there, Tasman is, one year or the other.
So if we. Yeah, just to give people an idea. So Tasman won it last year, then it was Auckland. Then Canterbury had 3 on the trot. Taranaki got 1. Before that, 3, 4, 5, 6 on the trot by Canterbury. So back to 2007 was Auckland. So it's been pretty much Canterbury since 2008 have only missed out twice.
Yeah, and look, I mentioned that Wellington had one more final in there. We had the second division final 5 years ago, I think.
Yes,
they had a horror season, got relegated down to Division 2, spent a couple of years in there, and then won the final and got promoted back up again. And before that, before 2000, and you're then looking at basically Auckland and Canterbury. The only other side, Wellington in 2000, you got Waikato in 2006, Taranaki in 2014, and Tasman in 2019. All the rest have been shared between Canterbury and Auckland. It is. Those are the 2 big brothers, and everyone else gets an opportunity every so often. Really, 100%. Yeah, it's like they shit round. And the Ranfurly Shield, which to me as a rugby fan is the pinnacle of provincial trophy wear. It's for those who aren't familiar with how the Shield works. You have to you have to win a game against the current holder to win the Shield, but they have to be playing at home. So it's every game. So if Canterbury's holding it, every game they play in Canterbury, the Shield's on the line. If they win, they keep it. If they lose, it goes to the next team, and that team can has to contest it at their next home game. So for me, that's the pinnacle. And if you look back over the stats over the last 20, 30 years, the Auckland had a mammoth run of 60-something games where they successfully defended it. Canterbury have held it more often than any other team in recent years. Waikato, Taranaki, and it's just the power that goes into it. I think when Otago won it sometime in the last decade, it was their first successful challenge in 50 years. North Harbour won it at some point for the first time in their history.
Otago won it at the end of 2018 as well.
2018. So
2017, 2018 were good years for the Shield. I mean, it went around Taranaki, Waikato got it for a while, Otago took it, and then unfortunately in 2019, Canterbury took it off Otago.
Yeah.
And so I've got a funny feeling it's going to get stuck in Canterbury for the next couple of years. And for me, it's good to see the Shield outside of Canterbury and Auckland. When it gets stuck there, people lose interest. But when it's moving around the other provinces, there's a lot more interest around it.
Definitely.
And a bit like that,
around a lot.
That 2014 Mitre 10 Cup final, or NPC final, was between Taranaki and Tasman, because Canterbury got knocked out in the quarterfinal, in the semi-final. Sorry, and that became suddenly when that was front page news that year, whereas previous years it hasn't been, because hey, it's Canterbury again. But as soon as it was being hosted down in New Plymouth, it became front page news, and the whole town got behind it. So it is good getting it out of. You've got to doff your cap to Canterbury. They've got a fantastic setup, but unfortunately, it does reduce interest in the NPC sometimes.
Absolutely, and you can see the passion for it. You know, when other teams have won it, when Hawke's Bay won the Shield a few years ago, when Otago won it, when Wellington won it in 2008, the street parades that are held by the province of where that Shield is, and it suddenly becomes a marketing tool where it's shared around and it's taken to all the clubs and everyone gets to see it. And then it shows back up in Canterbury again, and they kind of lock it away in the cupboard and go, cool, everyone knows what this thing is because we've had it for a while. Like I say, Auckland through the 80s, but we talked about how many All Blacks were in that Canterbury team of the 2000 final. Auckland through the 80s, they had just as many All Blacks in their team then as well. With Grant Fox, Sean Fitzpatrick, the Brooke brothers, these guys that were there. So you had two dominant eras where one province was particularly dominant because of the players they had.
And we remember the fact that Canterbury are dominant. They've got 14 NPC titles. Auckland have got 17. So whilst Auckland have only won one since 2000, and they've won sort of two. Well, they won it in 2007. The next one they win was in 2018. So they went 10 years without winning it. They still have won more than Canterbury, even though Canterbury won all the ones in between, pretty much. So those are the two dominant ones. Tasman picks up their first ever title this year. If you want to know how important or how people use that Ranfurly Shield, I did an interview with the CEO of Otago at the end of 2018 season when they just won it. I'll put a link to that down in the show notes below, so you can go and watch that if you like. Where he talks about how they use and the pride of having that Ranfurly Shield. So. Have a look, have a watch that video as well. Thank you, Anthony. I think we've covered off on the game.
I think, and I'm just. It's been a really great chat, Paul, and sort of talking about some of the stuff. You know, I'm looking forward to what the provincial season brings this year because of the disruption we've now got with coronavirus. It could be a completely different tournament. We talk about never seeing the All Blacks again. We might actually see them because they won't have had a lot of rugby up until that point. But I just want to finish on one humorous footnote to this all as well, and it was so Norm Hewitt. We talked about him playing on for most of the game with a broken arm through that, and he fessed up to it later in the week. And I think the game was played on Saturday. By Thursday, he was being heavily criticised by a member of the government, an associate minister for ACC, about how that's a poor role model for children, and how he shouldn't have been playing on, and he should have been coming off. A responsible conversation from an ACC minister. But the irony is, and a good mate of mine took a lot of glee with this because he idolised Norm Hewitt. The irony was that minister had resigned 5 days after that because she was caught drink driving. So I think my mate saw it as karma that you criticise the great Norm, and things aren't going to go well for you.
Oh, brilliant! Yes, but I'll be honest. Players should come off when they're injured. It's it is a great war story, but it's also, as the minister is true. It is also a bad example. Let's be honest.
Absolutely. I mean, karma aside, and the role model, and the irony of how that ended for her, she was right, I think. And as an ACC minister, very responsible. It's particularly younger players, particularly those coming up. And I've coached. While I haven't been playing, I've coached at under 19 level, and I'm now coaching my son's Ripper rugby team. So I don't consider it coaching, more teaching. If someone hurts themselves, you got to get them off. It's irresponsible to have them play on. It doesn't matter who they are. It can do more damage in the long run if they continue to play.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you very much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure discussing this.
My pleasure, Paul.
Hopefully everyone you've enjoyed watching it. So you can go back and look. We've already done retro rugbies for the 2011 Crusaders versus the Sharks in Twickenham, and then also the final between the Reds and the Crusaders as well. So and there'll be more coming up over the next coming weeks. Also tomorrow night, so that'll be Friday night at 7 o'clock, I'm looking at doing a watching party. So we'll nominate a game, and basically we'll have a second live chat like this going on alongside it, so you can watch the game, and then you can also have us chatting away, probably with myself and Steve, and you can provide your input and tell us about what you think about the game, and we can all get together in this time when we're all in lockdown and we're all apart. Let's have some social time together watching a game of footy. It'll be fun, folks, so join us tomorrow night at 7 o'clock.